This evening, it is my great pleasure to welcome our guest author, Len Dell'Amico, who is going to join us this evening. Memoir, Friend of the Devil, My Wild Ride with Jerry Garcia and Grateful Dead. It is not even published yet officially. It's Tuesday, the 15th is the publishing day, so you got something ahead of time here. This is a chronicle of both his time working at Garcia's side in the creation of the band's treasured and groundbreaking concert films and music videos, as well as a revelatory portrait of their close and unique friendship. As described in the excellent recent article in the Marin IJ, Len portrays the charismatic guitarist as a Christ-like figure who achieved great wealth and fame and yet lived like a Zen monk, disdaining the trappings of rock stardom. Len will be joined in conversation tonight by Blair Jackson. I'm going to introduce Len first, and then he's going to do the honors. Here's a few words about Len. Len has spent his entire working life in the film and television business, editing, writing, but mainly directing and producing concert films and music videos with such artists as Sarah Vaughan, Herbie Hancock, the Allman Brothers Band, Linda Ronstadt, Ray Charles, Blues Traveler, the Neville Brothers, Carlos Santana, Ruben Blades, and Bonnie Raitt. He met Jerry in 1980 when he became the Grateful Dead's video and film guy, and their friendship lasted for the rest of Garcia's life. In partnership with Jerry, they produced the historic first national pay-per-view broadcast in the U.S. from Radio City Music Hall in 1980, the best-selling award-winning home video So Far in 1988, a series of groundbreaking live concert broadcasts from 1987 to 91, and two classic music videos, Hell in a Bucket and Throwing Stones, to promote the band's hit album In the Dark. He continues to do freelance screenwriting, producing, and directing with a special interest in the environment and sustainability issues. His most recent feature film was the darkly comic Welcome to Dopeland, currently streaming on Amazon Prime. You've already applauded twice. Let's make it 3 times. Welcome, Len.
Thank you.
So, thanks for showing up, everybody. Is this a good mic position?
You are.
Yeah. I wanted to especially thank Blair for helping out. I don't like to be the center of attention.
That makes 2 of us.
Well, it's easier. I'm a behind the camera kind of guy, and we've known each other, well, 84, something like that.
85, I think, yeah.
And he's written the definitive biography of Garcia called An American Life, and a bunch of other stuff. And I heard of him from Garcia. I don't know if you probably heard this story. No. I was working with him out on the road. We would meet wherever he was playing with the Dead or solo, and we were working on what would end up being So Far, and in his hotel room or backstage or something, just the 2 of us. And we were enthusing about their fans and how strange and remarkable they are, and the wonderful gifts they give you and stuff. He never got over that. And he said, "Yeah, look at this," and he handed me a magazine called Golden Road, which I had never seen or heard of. It was brown cover. I think it was issue 3, brown and yellow. And he said, "Oh, it's just like literature, man. You won't believe what the level that they're talking on." And I looked at it. It's like, it's not Tiger Beat. It was. I understood what he was saying. Anyway, that's him. Golden Road. So thanks for being here.
Anyway, great to see you. But let's talk about you.
Sure.
I guess, the first question that I thought of as soon as I heard that you were doing a book was, why now? I mean, why 25 years or however many years it is?
Between 35 and 40 years. 30 and 40 years.
No, I mean since Jerry died, though. I mean
30.
30 years. Yeah, that's right. It's this year.
So the book is between 30 and 45 years ago.
And you sort of make it sound in the beginning of the book like you would always thought you would do it.
That's right.
But what made this the right time?
Impending death.
Always a good career move.
I feel great. But 30 years ago when he passed, it was shocking but not surprising. One of those things.
Right.
And I knew pretty soon that I would have to do this. I had taken notes contemporaneously because I always thought this was pretty unique. They were not like any other artist I've ever worked with. It's a subculture.
Yeah.
And we talk about that in the book a lot. And as the decades went by, I would rework the notes into more categories and stuff towards an eventual book. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I don't talk about my age, but you can guess. But 3 or 4 years ago, I said, so when exactly are you going to write this book? I mean, so it was like now or never, and it took 3 years. And what a relief. Yeah.
I was interested to see that you said you have purposely not read any of the books written about either the Grateful Dead or Jerry.
I own them all. I have a whole shelf, knowing that I one day would read them, but I also knew that I had to write the book, and I didn't want my memories to be mixed up with anything else or influenced. And I also said, in the introduction, I'm sure I'm contradicted in some other place, but what can I do? Well, I'm just telling you what I think or remember. And the strategy worked because, I had some rules when I started out. One was everything that's in there has to be a literal memory of exactly what happened, as honestly as no fudging. Maybe there's an exception where 2 things that happened separately were put together, but it didn't form a lie in any way or a fantasy to do that. Another rule was don't write anything if I think it will or might hurt somebody or injure somebody who's alive. If they're dead, I don't care. Which is kind of the opposite. You're not supposed to talk badly about the dead.
Right.
I don't understand that. They don't care. But you could be criticized for self-editing, but I just didn't. It's not worth it if I think it might hurt somebody's feelings. So I avoided that. And there was a third one that's always hardest for me to remember. Maybe it'll come up.
Did you have a sense of sort of how Garcia was being appreciated in the culture? Even if you're not reading the actual books about him or about the Grateful Dead. I mean, so you're aware of sort of the...
Well, it was part of my job really to be very aware of the media interaction with the talent. They're my client. I need to know what the zeitgeist is out there. And I toured. And I had the passes to go to all the shows, the best passes. So I would go just for fun. And I loved to be up in the cheap seats. There's good sound up there. The old Spectrum in Philadelphia used to sound great.
The rectum, as they called it. The book starts at the Warfield in San Francisco, essentially. The story starts when you meet Garcia backstage. And I think somebody told me recently that there are 22 individual little dressing rooms. And the Warfield.
Well, they would do legit theater.
It was from vaudeville days. That's what it was from. Right. So they had just this warren of backstage rooms, and you were brought in to. You're not even exactly sure why you're brought in at first.
No idea.
But you're kind of thrown in the room with Garcia, and all of a sudden, this crippling pot gets circulated throughout the room, and I mean, you're practically immobilized by it. But you're trying to be cool. You're kind of, okay, I can do this.
It's a stress test.
It's a stress test.
If I may interrupt, the Dead.
Yeah.
If you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Right.
Because they're just the whole scene.
And you've got Parrish looking at you. He's checking it out. Oh yeah. Is he freaking out? No.
Steve is a very sweet person.
Yeah.
I mean, it's shocking the difference between his image, but he was doing a job and he did it really well.
Yeah.
He was intimidating, and you watched yourself, but when that part of it was over, he was just a great guy.
You mentioned in passing that you had both seen the Grateful Dead and worked with them at, was it the Capitol Theater?
And elsewhere, yeah.
When you were doing stuff for
John Scher.
For John Scher. So how does working with the Grateful Dead immediately seem different than working with conventional bands?
Oh,
I mean, aside from when you got to know them, when you were dealing with them in New Jersey and just being either the director or a cameraman working on Grateful Dead shows.
The best way I can put it is just a complete freedom in what they were doing, which ultimately is why I had to get the job, because film and television directors need scripts. All right, give me the set list. Well, there really isn't one. There's no set list? Well, we have 120 songs, and we do 12 or 14 a night. I'm like, okay. I mean, I knew that, but the average director, that's like, and in the old days, you couldn't just film everything because it was way too expensive. Nowadays, 20 cameras, nobody cares.
Right, right.
But, so that sense of going out there without, without a net was the name of one of their albums.
Yeah.
And as a director, you have the best seat in the house. So you're seeing close-ups of everybody, all 6 musicians, watching them interact. I can only pick one at a time to show the audience or to put on tape. I can put a couple onto tape. But the sense of like, what are you doing? What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? And the time's passing, and if enough time passes, you could hear the crowd chatter go up because they don't care. They're in on it, and the chatter would get so it's like a party, and then all of a sudden you'd hear a song starting. Oh, we're at a concert. And what is it? Oh, it's The Wheel. Oh, and they calm right down, and often, sometimes the pauses were sometimes pretty long.
Especially with the Garcia band.
Yeah,
Endless time between songs.
Right. Well, he was
in a good way.
Yeah, he was saying, I think, we'll play when we're ready.
Yeah.
And you're just here. We're glad you're here. But they understood, and you're having fun. And every other act is like, there's the set list.
Right.
And it's good to know it in advance if you're recording it. But they want to keep it moving. And I love the Stones. Keith is my hero. He's the only person I say that about. But it is moving fast. That's part of what they do, even at 83. But that was just not their thing. It was, and then what people would call noodling, which is known as improvising. And I remember I went to see a show, the Spectrum or someplace, with a date, and they went into a space music. And she said, see, this is what I don't get. All 6 of them are playing different stuff. And I'm like, yeah. We have a lead bass player, a lead rhythm player, 2 lead drummers, and towards the end, after I'd seen them a million times, that was my favorite part of their show. But you asked, how is it different?
Yeah.
Yeah. No showmanship. No fire bombs or exploding things. I did an act which you probably would have heard of, I can't remember. But the drummer had this big top hat, and it had an explosion in it. And I'd go out as the director, stage manager, I need to know when the bombs are going to go off because I've got cameras quite close, and they'll step back. They don't want to get their hair on fire. And there's no rules in the 70s. And he said, well, go find the pyrotechnician. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I know? He's missing fingers. Hairs, too. And the guy, he's central casting pyrotechnician, twitchy and stuff. He said, why do you need to know this? And I'm like, trust me, I need to know. And the end of the drum solo, his head exploded.
Wow.
It was very impressive.
Excellent.
Too bad about the music. I don't even remember it. But no showmanship. I mean, the joke was, well, let's do a whole lot of shaking going on, and Jerry will take his shirt off and dance.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that.
And yet, I mean, in terms of musical arcs,
Yeah.
they reached peaks which are just nobody else that I've ever seen.
Did
And they also suck at times.
Yeah, they'll say that too.
Right.
Were there times when you had to sort of consciously not focus on Jerry or Bobby as the kind of leaders of the band in the
Absolutely.
sense that, you know, everybody kind of recognizes this is a full group thing and everybody is focusing in on every person. So it's not really just these two guys out front,
Oh,
which is
hell
sort
no.
of what the way most bands would treat it. So you had
Keith and
obviously
Nick.
had to be conscious of that.
Oh yeah, right from, you know, once I was working with them directly with no intermediary, I was contracted to them. They made it clear there's 6 of us, and I'm like, duh. And they're like, look at me, you know, Kreitzman or somebody, 6. And I'm like, I get it, but it's appropriate for what they're playing. Too, I mean, Lesh is one of the most amazing bass players ever,
Absolutely.
and Brent, ditto. So yes, when a vocalist is being done, you have to show the vocalist.
Right.
Not too strictly, but you know, you could get a 2-shot that has the vocalist and somebody else. But yes, motion. And I thought I did a good job. If at the end of a song I said, was everybody in that? Because it's hard, because it's live, and you're not going to get a redo. So I had to learn to be conscious of that. And A Failure was a whole song went by, and I'm like, I don't think I have a shot of Mickey. Okay, so the next song is going to be more
All Mickey.
all the time.
Yeah. In that 1980 shoot, which you did for Halloween, right?
Right.
Which was that the simulcast too?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that
the
was
one
the first
Jonathan just
national
mentioned it, yeah.
simulcast. It was done in I don't know how many, not that many theaters, but like 15 or 20 or
15 or 20.
Yeah, in the Northeast and
It
not
was called pay-per-view,
pay-per-view, right?
and it's the precursor of streaming,
Right,
essentially.
right,
And it came from boxing.
right.
First people to do this were boxers, and we imitated that with a mighty PA added and color, and came off really well. But that shows how they were innovators, which I think is something was kind of missed by the media. Led the way in so many things.
Well, and adding to the chaos of that night was the fact that you had pre-taped various comic bits with Franken and Davis, which are priceless, still
At the
among my
Warfield.
favorite things. Yeah, at the Wharf, they did them at the Warfield and then intercut them before and during the show or
Right.
during the break or something like that.
And the Warfield was a dead ringer for Radio City backstage.
Oh, okay.
In fact, the Warfield backstage was better visually and in other ways than what. And we redid them at Radio City, so now we had 2 versions. And if something screwed up live, I could always go to the one we already had. And yeah, a lot of that stuff is unreleased.
So in the case of something like there's this classic moment where Al Franken is playing Henry Kissinger, and he gets caught by Tom Davis for smuggling in a tape recorder, and he's like, there's nothing here, there's nothing. And was all that stuff pre-taped, or there were live bits too?
That
though, right?
particular bit was actually live.
Okay, it was live.
I had a version from work, but I didn't need it.
Yeah.
And Steve was called in, you know. Davis is like, oh, I can't believe you're taping this. And Al was like,
Steve,
I'm not going to sell this tape. And he had a great Kissinger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish he was still in the Senate. And then Steve has to take him away. Give him
And of course
money.
the Jerry's Kids routine, which was
Send up a Jerry Lewis
yeah for
telethon.
yeah.
No, and you know, you asked about what made them different earlier. The guys in the band, I've never worked with people so game. Like, you know, we're going to do hours and hours of this. You know, they're not. We had a problem. We have to do that again. Again? Well, we've only done it once. You know, hit their marks. You know, that sort of thing. I'm not going to ask Greg Allman to hit his mark and tell that joke again. He's not going to do that. But they were just like Cats and Jammer Kids, the cartoon. Just everything was like, you had to sell them on the idea that this was going to be fun. From then on, okay, this is going to be fun. And that was really my job. I mean, I didn't realize that. I brought him a deal. Top money up front. You own the copyright, you own the master tapes, they'll pay for the production, they'll pay for me. Perfect offer. A lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
You're already doing the show. All this is a pile of money to do nothing except the same thing and let them broadcast it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I lay it out, and I'm pretty proud, and Jerry's like, is this going to be fun for us? And I'm like, wait, I have to guarantee that it's going to be fun too? So I did. I said, yeah, no, it's going to be fun. It was.
Who was the most comfortable as an actor, so-called actor? I think this is the bit where you come in and Bob is combing his hair, of course. He's trying to make him, he's doing the Bob
Got a
weird.
blow dryer.
Got a blow dryer, that's right. Yeah.
They're asking him to introduce them, and he goes, I'm too busy. I'm blowing my... So the willingness, they parody themselves.
Yeah,
Okay, that's pretty cool.
yeah,
Right there.
Mm-hmm.
But Garcia is the answer.
yeah.
And Davis, we did a couple with Frank and Davis, and then I did Davis only as the host. So he's out working with me on writing bits. And he pitches me, it's New Year's Eve, and we'll have Jerry doing the Straight Arrow cooking show with the chef's hat and straight arrow on the apron. And earlier that year, he had spent the year sobering up. The previous year had been the disaster.
86, yeah.
And in 87, he was...
That's the New Year's one, yeah.
Yeah, and he was completely sober and in the dark, came out, good year. But everybody, if you're a deadhead, you knew the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's, well, Dave, or Tom, would you like to try my bun cakes? And he takes them out, ooh, watch out, they're hot. And then Tom points at the lemonade. What's that? Oh, it's alcohol-free lemonade. And listen up, kiddos, you don't have to use drugs or alcohol to have fun. And he has a cigarette in his hand all the time. And he went to put it down. I'm like, no, cigarette every take. And let it burn so that everyone's worried about when the ash. And so the punchline of the bit is, I just have to put some powdered sugar on top. And he picks up this giant bag of white powder. And he goes, and when it was finished, and I saw grown men fall down laughing. So I said, Tom, this is too on the money. I don't think he's going to want to do this. It's really, self-exposure and all that. It's going to be great. He's going to love it. Let's go see him right now. I'm like, okay. So we find him, and he's smoking in the studio. Hey, guys. And then Tom said, go ahead. Tom pitches it, the whole thing. Jerry's like, I think you're laughing at me, not with me. And Tom's like, yeah. And he's like, I don't think so. And then he looks at me and he goes, Tom says, this is going to be funny. People are going to laugh their ass off. And Jerry looks at me and he goes, is he right? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, okay. I mean, that is game.
Yeah.
Because he loves cinema. And he was part of it. He was an actor. I'm surprised he didn't do more stuff. Probably because he's so recognizable, it would be hard to disappear into a character. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he enjoyed it. And doing the videos, the two I did were both Bobby tunes.
Right.
But he just loved being there. And he's having the time of his life. Just watching this circus.
Bedlam.
Well, yeah, but it's controlled. I mean, a film shoot, you gotta, there's a schedule, and you gotta move on, and you gotta get it done on time, and be safe.
Mm-hmm.
He said, don't touch the tiger.
All right.
And Bobby had to put his foot on it.
He's incorrigible.
Yeah. Haven't seen him lately. I saw him at the Sphere last year, which was astounding. But the basic dynamic is still there. I mean, that show is stunning. And the musical arcs are, what they were in their essence. And what's his name? I can never remember. He's got such a... John Mayer.
John Mayer.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you know, they did an Eyes of the World that was as good as anything the Dead ever did. He had that flying guitar thing, you know, just, and the crowd just went crazier and crazier with each verse. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about 1987, which was the Dead's biggest year and probably your biggest year in terms of starting to really do tons of live concert stuff where you would go to Anaheim Stadium. Did you shoot the entire Dylan Dead tour?
No, because some of them were arenas.
Oh, right, that's right.
I think I got 6 or 7 in the can. But it was also a big year for me in HBO.
Yeah.
87, I worked every single day, hard, and I loved it. It was fantastic. That was the hardest I've ever worked, and I enjoyed it. The hardest thing I've ever done is this. And it was being by yourself.
Yeah.
It's not for me, but I had to do it. I mean, because film and television is you're working with a huge crowd of people, and every one of them is excellent at what they do. What could be easier? It's great. Had a ball.
Were you surprised when they eventually sort of mined the video vaults to the extent that they have? I mean,
Mined, good word. M-I-N-E-D.
Yes, View from the Vault series for concerts, and then they released the Trucking Up to Buffalo. There've been various releases. That, I mean, I know they weren't shot for that purpose.
Weren't they?
Well, I don't know. Were they?
Well, when I finished the book, I read it once, about 6 months ago.
This book?
Yep. And then I understood what was happening. I didn't really until it was put in that.
What do you mean?
Well, I put it in linear fashion, and it's all there, and the conversations we had, and what he was doing, and what he was after, and it was all by design. And the critical conversation, the first stadium tour, we're talking major expense for filming and reinforcement. And you know, there were purists who were, why do we need video? And I'm like, have you been to a stadium? Do you have any idea the person? It's a quarter of a mile, you know. It wasn't me. They decided they had to have this, and they hired me. So I'm going to do what the client wants. This is the first, the 87 was their first stadium tour with Dylan.
Right.
And so I went to the meeting with the band to show them the plan. And I laid it all out, number of cameras and budget and whatnot. And then there's always a pause, and everyone's waiting for Garcia to speak first. Poor guy. And again, is this the highest quality that's possible? And I said, no, this is reinforcement. Why would you want that? That would be a lot more. And he said, we want that. It has to be the highest quality possible. And I was a little, but I didn't pursue it because I want the highest. Sure, it's your money, you know. Stupid me might have said, well, wait a minute, no, shut up. They want it to be good. So he knew these things are going to go into the vault, and he knew that he had heart disease, and this was not going to last forever. And he knew the dependency of the organization, which was maybe 50 or 60 people, and that they would be very helpful when they were needed. And that's exactly what happened. So I think there were about 10 releases over maybe 10 years or more, and they all did fine. And I'm so glad they exist. And they're in the vault. And by the way, there's another 40 that haven't come out yet.
Really? Okay.
But I think where we're headed, once they're all, they have to be digitized. We now have technology that can actually improve the technical quality after the fact. Well, when I grew up and went to school and had a profession, that was impossible. It defies the laws of physics to make a copy of something that's better than the something. Not possible. Yes, it is. Now we have computers. You make changes to something and it learns, oh, you like this. And pretty soon you're looking at some, oh my God. There's a guy named Christopher Hazard, who's out there remaking stuff that he finds on YouTube.
Yeah, I think, didn't he do the Garcia at Shoreline thing? He worked on that? On the YouTube version of it?
Well, he does. He not at the production. No, he gets him now.
No, I know, that's what I mean.
And runs it through his stuff.
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
There's a very technical. I can't get into it, but analog video is every frame is two frames, and that's called interlacing, and it makes it look crappy. And he de-interlaces it, so it comes out as one frame, and it looks much better right away. And then he does other stuff, and that's just the beginning. We're going to have 3D versions of that band touring within 10 years.
As a guy who has stayed in video the way you have, is it frustrating to look back at how primitive, in a sense, so many of the things you were dealing with were in '87? I mean,
Wow.
you know, there was just the beginning of like paint box and things like that for effects. And
Well, have you seen my black and white stuff from the Capitol Theater?
no, oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Those cameras were crappier than the doorbell camera at your house. I'm not kidding, they are. And in Rolling Stone, they picked Bruce Springsteen's Play It All Night from 1978 at the Capitol, the video, as the best version of Play It All Night ever. And somebody called me up and said, "You got to read this." I just fell down laughing. It's just, but you look at it, and it's the performance. It's not the technology. But to answer your question, no, because I knew that what we were doing was the highest quality that was possible at that time. And that's all I can do. But it does change rapidly. And if you haven't been to the Sphere, keep track of who's playing there and, you know, see it before you pass on, because it's incredible.
Let me see. I wanted to ask something about. I was going to ask you about in the mid '80s, which was a semi-dark time for Jerry, as we all know. You know, they weren't making albums. You were just in the beginning stages of trying to do the So Far video, which of course is when we met.
Took 3 years.
Yeah, so like 2 or 3 years there, where sort of there was a kind of inertia and sort of nothing happening in a way, and in a sense, in your position, you had to just go for the flow. You had to go with the flow. You always had to wait until their inspiration matched you had to keep your inspiration high so that when they would match when they were inspired.
Yeah. It turns out I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah. Was that frustrating, or no? Because you always had other things to do.
Yeah.
So when they would suddenly not need you for a year and a half, it was fine.
Yeah, that was the deal.
Yeah.
They have right of first refusal in
Right.
the contract. That means you have to give me a certain notice, but other than that, I can do whatever I want. And as everyone knows, they paid very well and took care of everybody very well. And they kept their ticket prices very low. I was in meetings where, well, what are we going to charge? Well, what did we charge last year? $15? What? You know, and they would be arguing, and Jerry would be like, no, we want everybody to be able to come to these shows. You know, the business plan was 120 songs. If you want to hear the song you like, you have to come to 3 shows. And guess what? We happen to be in town for 3 shows. Come to them all. What does that mean? Well, the ticket prices have to make that possible. And they did. And it was a masterpiece of business. I mean, look what it built, just to this day. But I think a ticket at the Sphere, I mean, what do they start at $500 now?
4 or something. Yeah, it's crazy.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you know, you get old, and I want the money.
What were your dealings like with MTV? I mean, they seemed like the least likely to be MTV stars.
Hilarious, in a word.
Yeah.
I met an executive there at lunch or something to deliver a tape, a 3/4-inch master tape, and they have a plastic button that you take out,
Right.
and it can't be over-recorded, so it's a safety. And I handed him the tape, and he took it out of the box he's looking at, and I see the red button is still in there. I said, "Excuse me," and I took that out and put it on the table, and we were talking, and he's getting flustered because, I don't know, I'm not what he's used to or whatever. And he's started chewing on it, and then he swallowed it. And I was like,
Maybe you thought it was a Red Hot or something.
I'm just going to pretend I didn't see that. And then he goes, I just ate that button, didn't I? Yeah, you did.
Record industry geniuses.
Won't hurt you. But they were business, so, you know, they saw the numbers. So they did Day of the Dead in August '87, 24 hours, nonstop dead. And I had to provide all this stuff, like a machine, you know, here's some more. It was great.
Steve Marcus has famously said that that was sort of the downfall of the Grateful Dead in terms of them becoming too popular in a sense.
87?
That day, specifically Day of the Dead, is the day everything changed according to him. Which I think
No, I don't think so.
well, no, I think it's an interesting point though.
Well, they got huge.
Yeah, it gave them an exposure that they hadn't had, and it was kind of
Oh, wait,
constant.
oh.
There it was for an hour.
I'm
you
going
know,
to
for a
blame
full
In the
day.
Dark.
Yeah, but even so, them like actually having correspondence at Dead shows outside the thing, and there they are in the lot, and oh, yeah, look at all this great stuff they're selling, and look at all these great people having a good time, and that attracted so many people, and that's part of what became their downfall in the '90s. I mean, it just got too big, and it all sort of
Yeah.
started right around then. I mean, it was In the Dark.
Well,
the album for
87
sure,
was a
but-
confluence that
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
It was Reagan, and there was a need for what they had. In '88, Citibank had a campaign on TV. I used to watch TV that had ads in it, as did we all, who has gray hair. And the bank had, Citibank is huge, and the slogan was, Citi Card for those who want to do more than survive. And what? I heard that, and I'm like, because the hit song was "We Will Survive"
Right.
was the chorus, and I'm like, wow, they're challenged by this, because if you take it to heart, you know, it's like we really don't need your crap to be happy, and that's not good if you're a bank. But that went on for a year, and it was. I just thought that was a very strange tagline for people who want to do more than just survive. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How much more? Elon Musk? Does he have enough? But I have that story in the book about the phone call where somebody in the band calls Jerry in his car and says somebody is stealing from them. And I only heard Garcia's side because the phones in those days were in the console. And he goes, he's talking to a band member. He goes, so, do you have enough money? Yeah, so do I. No, we're not going to fire him. Why? Where's he going to go? We can't inflict him on society. He really said that. And I was laughing, and then I realized he was laughing too, but he was serious. He was a Christian. He was, you know, those teachings. Plus, you know, who told you he was stealing? Probably somebody who wants his job. I mean, you know, people are not sufficiently. He was very smart, the smartest person I've ever met. He was always ahead of everybody else in terms of thinking about what was going to happen or the organization.
Not to get too dark here near the end, but you say a couple of times that you feel as though Jerry knew he didn't have long left by 94, 95.
No question.
What led you to believe that?
Well, when I finally read the book, I could see that I had been in denial, and I've been through that before. My father-in-law, Bill Kimpton, I stumbled upon him in his house, and he was going through a storeroom, and he didn't keep stuff, but he was just throwing stuff away. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's that? Isn't this a letter from your father? And he opened wine bottles and throwing them away. And this is what people do when they don't want to leave the mess to their kids. I didn't see it till later, because you don't want to see it. And we were commuting, Jerry and I, to work with Bill, actually, and he was talking about, I went down to the peninsula and I saw, is it Sarah?
Yeah.
And Heather?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. I've never heard you mention that. And how long in advance did you saw them? And blah, blah, blah. He said it was great. And then he was reminiscing about the parrot that his mother had found after the great earthquake, that fell in love with his father. And then the father died, and parrots marry for life, so the parrot died too. Like that, he's reminiscing. And then before going to Betty Ford, he visited Sue at the office, and I happened to be there. 2-hour reminiscence, very funny. The pizza joint in Menlo Park, and it's just clear that he was cleaning things up to take off. Mm-hmm. And as it turns out, he went to Serenity Knolls, so it would be clean, as opposed to messy at your own house or something, I think. And I don't find it tragic at all, and I'm pissed off when I see it depicted as, because he's the least tragic person I can think of. I mean, talk about doing what you want, and the range of accomplishments, and but he never complained about anything. So, did he ever talk about having heart disease, or talk about the dark side of addiction? No.
Yeah.
No. One thing, he complained about not getting credit for being a good songwriter.
Yeah, that surprised me when you
And
wrote
he's
that.
right about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Hunter too.
Yeah.
Don't get enough credit.
Well, Hunter got into the Writers' Hall of Fame,
Yeah, yeah.
at least.
Right.
I guess the two of them did.
Yeah.
We have a nice handheld note card for some questions, if you think it'd be time, Blair. Would
Sure.
that sound good?
Yeah.
So if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll pass the mic around. Here you go.
I know this guy.
He's a ringer.
Hey, when you filmed the Throwing Stones video, how come Bill Kreisman wasn't there and Robbie Taylor was a stand-in?
Damn, somebody found out. How did you figure? You were there.
That's right, he was
why.
I
there.
don't know the true story.
Bill was not in the mood, so
Hard to imagine.
referencing, you had to go with their flow. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to do this $200,000 shoot that we all agreed to sell the record. And Taylor happened to be there, God bless him. And he said, I can do Bob, I can do Billy. And I'm like, what? He said, yeah, watch. And he does the walk. And then I said, just get him a fat suit. And a little fat suit. And get a mask that completely covers. So you were there, so you knew it wasn't Bill, but I don't listen to him. It was Bill. This is Jay Blakesberg, one of the greatest cameramen of all time. A photographer, rather. And his work is all over this.
We have a
Anyone?
hand up. I saw a hand somewhere. Be brave. No? Oh,
So what was your interaction with Robert Hunter?
Oh, good. There's a whole chapter about it. I think he's he's the GOAT. He's one of the greatest of all time. And I have a theory which I go into about how I think that the Dead can be seen as onions with rings. And at the very heart is Hunter, because his lyrics are the basis of the liturgy, that's what I call it, of the songs that we think of. There's a lot of wang dang doodle and other stuff like that, and rock and roll and covers, but you can tell the audience is like, oh yeah, here comes Eyes of the World or Franklin's Tower, or there's about 12 songs that are just the essence of what they were. So I think the essence, there's Garcia Hunter, but Hunter, the lyrics are kind of, he had a perfect foil. They each had a perfect foil. But he was an odd guy. He was sensitive and shy, and I don't think he ever got accustomed to the zoo surrounding the band, and there was a lot of crazy stuff, abusive stuff. As a professional, I just, it's my job to swim around it or whatever. But he was very sensitive. And also, he wasn't in the band. So he had to sit there and be aware of everything we're talking about, but not being out there. At least he got taken care of monetarily and everything. And of course, their relationship was, I think, the key, the basis. But I've learned that it's better if there are two writers, that one be in the band and one not. But there's always a partnership. Lennon, McCartney, Richards and Jagger, and Lerner and Lowe, and who were those two brothers, Gershwins. But yeah, one thing when they were bringing Dylan in, we're all huge Dylan fans, and we were talking about Dylan, and Bob Hunter said, yeah, I think he's so much more accessible than I am. I'm like, I had to argue with him. I'm not going to let that go by. And I said, there are more references in Desolation Row than in your entire output. Ripple doesn't have any four-syllable words in it. It's just perfectly accessible, And I made him listen to me. I don't know what he thought of it, but they got to work together, Dylan and Hunter. That was good. Silvio. Anybody?
Here's somebody.
Mr. Dell'Amico,
Good effort.
two-part question.
Close.
How did you come up with the title, and which one of you is the devil?
Good question.
I had a bunch of titles that I was testing, and whenever I said Friend of the Devil, people said, that's it.
Yeah.
Including my daughter. Yeah. This book wouldn't be here without her help. And, it was, and the publisher, it was clearly the favorite. So I had to consider that. And, for me, actually there's an afterword about this. I think in the song, the word devil is closer to trickster in what Hunter meant. If Satan existed, he wouldn't be in a cave in a hill. He would be in a palace or the White House. Did I say that? Uh-oh. So, who's who? Okay, so Jerry is the trickster. He was a trickster, I think, which is a figure in literature and myth that goes back thousands of years. It's the figure that allows you to understand the outside looking in. The Abrahamic religions, they had a God that was good and bad, and then Christianity, God became all good, so they had to invent Satan to make money. And but the trickster is throughout all folklore. There's what's the Joker is on that spectrum, and then you have stand-up comedians. And so so I'm the friend. Certainly not devilish.
Anybody else? Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I'm actually from Philadelphia area, saw most of my GD shows at the Spectrum. It is a dungeon, but it's our dungeon.
Yeah, it was great.
Appreciate you representing. And Mr. Jackson, just want to say thank you for a lifetime of scholarship.
Thank you.
So grateful. In the So Far home video, one of the things that I've always held on to, I've had it VHS and DVD, and is the bromance that you capture between Garcia and Brent, just like the googly eyes and the trading of licks. And I just wanted to ask any reflection you had on their friendship or the effect he had on Garcia in life and his passing, since you had such a close seat.
Yeah, well, that's in there too. That's very important to me. You said So Far, right? Yeah. Okay, because there are lots of concerts from 87 to 91, actually 88 to 90, those 3 years. There's 2 years, 90, 89, 90, 91. No, 89, 90, because Brent died and after that.
Yeah.
That interaction was, I learned, Brent was getting better and better. There's no question. And by 87, I think Garcia knew that he had the band that he had always imagined, and it was mostly Brent to provide that final piece. You know, Hammond and grand piano, sometimes one hand on each, and that voice. And Bob didn't look at Jerry much. He liked to look at his fretboard. But he and Brent did, as you said, in the times I'd be in the truck going, where is that incredible guitar solo? Oh, it's Garcia, and he's not even looking at his hands. He's just looking over there, and it's happening by itself. So I'd have a cross shoot, it's called, one camera on Jerry and one on Brent, 2 close-ups, so I could do this. And when they got going, remember it's coming up on the giant screens, and then the crowd would get on board, and it was just mayhem. And I think when Brent passed, that was the first brick coming out of the wall of the operation. For me, that was the beginning of the end, would be Brent passing. And when I was there at the band meeting where they were like, well, what are we going to do? We have a tour in Europe. And I'm like thinking to myself, you're going to pay it back and take enough time to find somebody. And they decided to do the tour instead. And I don't think that was fair to Vince. Not enough rehearsal. And then they brought in the tall guy, Hornsby.
The tall guy.
He's very tall. And they didn't rehearse that. You're a keyboard player in the band, and then you come out and there's another one. Okay, can we work this for a while and find out, but they just barreled ahead. And no, I think Brent was a monster musician, and I'm so glad that it's there, that material. Hey Pocky Way, Dear Mr. Fantasy, those tunes where the 2 guys got it going. Yeah.
Did you want to close with the reading you were planning? Do you think that would be a good thing for you?
Sure.
Let's do that. Okay. I'll take your mic if you want to pass on over there. We'll close with a reading from Friend of the Devil.
This is the beginning of chapter 1. So, beginning of the book. It's the first part of the chapter. So I found myself somewhat dazed in the back of a cab on my way from SFO to a theater unfamiliar to me in downtown San Francisco called the Warfield. Dazed because when I woke up that morning in Brooklyn, whatever plans I had were tossed aside. And instead I was put on a plane to SF. And because I was sick with some kind of cold or something and in denial about it, and also jet lag. And to be truthful, I was pretty frightened about whatever situation I was now agreeing to put myself in. It was September 25th, 1980, and I was 29. The driver took me to the backstage door of the Warfield and helped me with my carry-on bag and attaché case, a thing that replaced the briefcase in those days. I glanced around at the peculiar scene. It was twilight, excitement in the clean, fresh SF air as showtime was approaching. There were a dozen or so wild-looking young men and women happily twitching and gyrating to music from a boombox, possibly due to the substances in their bloodstreams. Before I realized in my addled state what was happening, a scraggly bearded guy got in my face, grinning maniacally. "Hey, you got any extra passes?" I just looked at him dumbfounded. The crowd had immediately sized me up as a likely guest list person. Other greeters moved toward me, talking, gesticulating. The cab driver nudged me, put my bags down, offered a receipt. I came back to reality, paid him, and he shook his head and gave me a look of pity as he turned to go. I had a half-formed feeling of, wait a second, as I watched him retreat, but it was too late. He was gone. I summoned an ounce of courage, turned to face the grim metal door, the backstage entrance to a Grateful Dead show, the hugely hyped first show of an historic 2-week run in their hometown. I ignored the shouts coming from the gatekeepers and knocked on the door. Nothing. People around me laughed and clapped. They weren't threatening really, but in my bewildered state, I felt a wave of panic, and I pounded hard on the door, thinking, what the fuck am I going to do if this door never opens? The cab is gone, I've got luggage, Jesus fucking Christ. I suppress the panic. I have no choice but to pound on this door until it opens. Suddenly, the door swings open, and there is a bearded, long-haired guy in a cowboy hat lunging out, looking around angrily, brandishing a long black metal flashlight in one hand, like, who the fuck is pounding on this door? I try to look non-threatening, shrinking back, luggage by my side, not sharp enough mentally to realize that the crazy fans were probably pounding on this door every few minutes. I shout at the guy, Sue Stevens said I should ask for Steve Parrish. Sue is Garcia's personal manager, and Steve is the stage crew member in charge of all things Garcia. The guy looks me up and down, moves back, slams the door behind him. The little crowd resumes their jeering and merriment at my expense. A long minute passes, and the door swings open again, and there's Big Steve Parrish himself, tall and large, black mustache and intense gaze. The crowd recognizes him immediately and shrinks back in awe and respect, falling into a murmuring silence. I'm like, okay. It was kind of like a PBS nature documentary, where you see firsthand how a specific tribal society works. In this case, the interface between the adoring, ecstatic fans and a living person, Big Steve, who symbolizes the object of their adoration, Grateful Dead. He suddenly appears, and they shrink back in humility and quiet excitement, like plants that close their leaves in the presence of direct sunlight. To my great relief, Steve waves me inside and orders someone to grab my bags, and then leads the way into the backstage area of the Warfield. I'm concerned about my bags and the seedy-looking guy who was taking possession of them, but Steve just keeps moving, and I'll be damned, but I did end up in a nice hotel room at the end of the night with my bags. Grateful Dead may look like an out-of-control circus, but it isn't. Backstage is a warren of corridors and spaces and rooms filled with cigarette, marijuana smoke. Happy people going in both directions in the narrow corridors. Lots of chatter and laughter, people in weird outfits. A guy in a full clown suit with the red nose. Kids of all ages laughing, running, and you could hear the excited hum of the full house of the fans upstairs. Invisible from here, but waiting to explode very soon when the band came on. I just follow Steve. We arrive at a door. Steve turns to me and indicates, okay, you wait here. He pushes open the door, and a huge cloud of pot smoke comes pouring out of the room, an overwhelming blast, right out of a Cheech and Chong movie. I have plenty of experience with smoking pot by this time in my life, but in this moment I'm a bit staggered. I'm backstage at a Grateful Dead concert, about to have a meeting with Jerry Garcia, which I know is actually an audition for the job of directing the band's first live mass media event, using untested technology to reach their fans all across America. Something that had never been done before. And deliver a top quality audiovisual experience. What could go wrong? I stumble into the room so thick with smoke you can't see across it and hear a voice to my left. It's Garcia welcoming me. Hey, man! I look at him, seated, looking up at me, and handing me the largest joint I've ever seen. Here, have some of this. The burning joint in his fingers is inches from my face, framed entirely by his big smiling face. Garcia is a big man with a big head and an unruly penumbra of thick black hair and a full salt and pepper beard, always wearing his signature aviator-style glasses. He has dark eyes and animated dancing eyebrows, a prominent nose, and big cheeks puffed out by a semi-permanent grin. While performing, his movements are smooth and relaxed, but offstage he seems to crackle with electricity. Confronted with the huge joint Garcia was offering me, I know immediately this is one of those what the fuck moments. I could say, oh, no thank you, I'm not feeling great, I probably shouldn't. Or I could just run out of the room screaming into the night, yelling, no, I didn't sign up for this. I'm just a tech-type nerd from New York, not some kind of swinging psychedelic adventurer. I look Garcia in the eye and take the joint from him and smile and thank him and take a big toke from it. Then I look around to my right in the haze and find someone to pass it to. There are no familiar faces, maybe 8 people sitting on chairs and a sofa and upturned road boxes. They note my arrival, but quickly go back to their chatter and laughter. Garcia waves me into the room. "Come on in, sit down." I smile and nod and quickly realize there's nowhere to sit. Steve, still in the doorway, notices as well. Then he suddenly barks at this big scowling Hell's Angel guy sitting on a road box beside Garcia. "Hey, Tiny, give him your seat." Holy shit, now I'm really alarmed. The Hell's Angel turns his head to look at me, his scowl deepening, then slowly gets up, grumbling menacingly. Inside I'm shouting, no, I don't need a seat. Don't do this to me, please." But I keep my cool, nodding politely to Tiny, and Steve takes him outside and closes the door. As soon as I sit down, Garcia turns to me with that big happy grin, makes a sweet greeting. "Glad you could make it. Good to meet you. How was your flight?" I'm relieved that he does in fact know who I am, and that I'm here at his behest, and he seems like a really nice guy. The giant joint goes between us again, and the weed begins to hit me. My God, this is not like what we smoke in New York. I try to relax into the high. Garcia explains to me that tonight is the first night in a 15-show run at the Warfield, and that they are adding an acoustic set at the start of the show, which their fans are all worked up about. After the Warfield run, the Dead are looking to play some shows at the Sanger in New Orleans, and then move to Radio City Music Hall in New York, where they will do another 8-show residency. The last show will be on Halloween, and it will be televised via closed-circuit broadcast to 20 or more theaters across the U.S., something that has never been done before, and also simulcast across the nation on FM radio. He's articulate and speaks quickly as he briefs me while making sure I'm keeping up with him. Fans will buy tickets to see the band on huge color screens in theaters equipped with state-of-the-art PA systems, good and loud. And I start to understand why I'm sitting here with him, because I am someone who can help make this happen. I mentioned to Garcia that I recently filmed the live concert of the Meters and Neville Brothers at the Sanger in New Orleans. The Meters are well known for their improvisational playing, which can be difficult for film directors to capture, and which Grateful Dead are, of course, famous for. Lots and lots of improvisation. Garcia smiles and nods knowingly, as if he has seen some of the footage already. Or maybe he has spoken to Art Neville about it, or maybe he's just signaling, "Yeah, you just filmed the Meters and the Nevilles, 2 of the greatest bands ever, and somehow you got that gig, and I heard it went well, and so that qualifies you to be sitting here." I'll never know. I am now firmly in the grip of the weed. It's like I'm watching a movie, a Fellini movie maybe, a movie that I'm also in. Bob Weir pops in suddenly, acoustic guitar slung around his neck, laughing, the sound from the venue above surging until he shuts the door. He strikes me as a very relaxed, outgoing guy, and male model good-looking, athletic, in marked contrast to Garcia. He makes a reference to the impending disaster of the acoustic set. Garcia returns the jocular repartee, and it's clear that doing an acoustic set is Garcia's idea, and everyone else is just going along with it. Then Weir refers cryptically to the director auditions going on for the Halloween broadcast. "Is this one of the guys?" referring to me. We had not formally met. Garcia nods, and they have a good laugh, and then Weir exits, still laughing. Geez, what am I in for? Parrish ushers someone else out of the room, brings Tiny the Hell's Angel back into the room, and gives him the seat. Tiny glares at me. Garcia seems to notice my, shall we say, slight discomfort. I'm so high, my head is spinning, but he presents that warm, reassuring smile, signaling that all will be okay. I had no idea then, but over the next 15 years, I'd grow accustomed to his ability to make others comfortable. Even in that moment, I could see he was a warm and gracious man, something of a charm machine. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Len, for that wonderful reading. We are going to take a couple minutes and reset.